All right, on today's episode of Python Papi, we're back inside our TensorFlow course, and we're still doing our malaria functional API module. Let's have a look at what we went over today. Now, yesterday, if you recall, we were going over the different use cases for the functional API and why we would use it over the sequential API. And today, we're going to pick up where we left off. And so these kinds of structures or models could not be built with sequential API, and hence the need for functional APIs. And then the last reason why we are going to be using a functional API is the fact that we could use shared layers. With shared layers, we can have a layer or particular layer in our model which already has a predefined way of encoding information. So when we pass information, let's say we have an input one, for example. When we pass in this input one, our first layer or encoder produces an output, which is going to be different from when we pass in another layer, I2, for example. But the way it produces these outputs is in a very thoughtful manner. So we can have I1, I2, I3, which all share the first layer, and then we have other layers of the model which follow on. With that said, we'll look at how to create functional APIs. Let me move down a little bit. I do have a little bit of a glare. Let's go ahead and move down so we can see what's next. All right, before starting with the creation, we are going to import some classes. We'll start by importing the input class. You can see the end of line 106. You see there we have the input here. The input imported. And then TensorFlow corrects models. We're going to import model. You can see that the end of, you can see that at line 105 here we have our model imported. So this is all of the imports that we're going to use. They're basically the same things that we use in our last modules, just a little two new added imports of the model and the import. And then we have all of our same data information that we brought over. So I'm hoping that we don't get the same hiccup that we got the last time with the computational error, or not the computational error, but the computational problem where it was really slow compiling our information because we are using the same exact data. The only difference is we're using a different API. So hopefully that does play a major difference. If not, then we'll just see how it goes. But we do have a little bit more light reading. So we now have access to the func input. Since we're using the functional API, this is how we call that. We have the func input, and then we have the input, which we will call input takes in the shape. We are going to copy the same exact shape we have in the sequential API. At this point, we could start stacking up all these different layers that we stacked up when we were using the sequential API. Now we started with the Cov 2D right up until the dense layer. So this is all the same stuff that we brought over from the sequential API, and we're just bringing it over to the func. The func input. This is supposed to be here, not in it. So let me get and change this really quickly. So we have the func input here, change it there, and then change it here. And then, yeah, so we brought everything over. The only difference is you can see here we have these x's. X equals Cov D2, X equals batch normalization, X equals max pool. Now, I'm not going to get into the explanation of that right now because we're still just diving in and still getting started. So I will pick it up tomorrow and keep you posted every step of the way. But for now, this is the Python Papi. You guys stay Gucci.